Hi there. In this Quicken tutorial video, I'm going to cover the preferences pane of the Quicken software. In the preferences, that's where you can set lots of default options and kind of instruct Quicken on how you want it to operate and in the ways that best suit you. It is a kind of a deep menu, so this video takes a little bit of time, but I go through everything pretty thoroughly, and it should help you to clear up some what would be mysteries for you if you're just getting started. So hopefully it's helpful. I will see you in the video. Thanks. I'm Joe DiSanto, by the way. I'm an independent CFO and business consultant. I actually spent most of my career in Los Angeles building a few multi-million-dollar businesses, and I've since semi-retired, and now I help other businesses and individuals manage their money and plan better for their future. So if you're interested in small business, personal finance, and real estate advice, please subscribe to the channel. Thanks. Hey there, I am back here with another installment of my Quicken tutorial series. Hoping that people are finding it helpful. I have another installment here which is going to be about the preferences menu of Quicken. Basically, the preferences menu is right here under Edit Preferences, and it is there to kind of set up different functionalities or customizations of the software to your liking. So I just wanted to go through what all the bits and pieces are in there. As I've said before, Quicken is what I call a legacy software. It's been around for a long time, probably like 30 years. And I always say, like, I think when I bought it for the first time, I had to go to Staples and like get a CD. Gosh, might have even been floppy disks. Who knows? So it's pretty deep, and it has a lot of stuff in it, which I find good. Some people really love simplicity, and they don't want options. So I can appreciate that, but I like options. So anyway, like all kind of more in-depth bits of software, it has some preferences for customization. So let's go here. So startup is what you can imagine it is. It's what screen shows up when you start the software. I have it set to home screen. That's the default, but you can choose what you want the software to look like and what menu you want to see right when you start up the software. So there you go. This option is if you want Quicken to automatically download transactions to all your connected accounts upon startup. I don't do that because not always do I want to download transactions. Not that there's anything wrong with doing that right away. You can download transactions and sort of let them sit in the downloaded, to be entered queue as long as you want. You can even close the software and reopen it, and they'll still, be in the queue. But once I see like the red flag and like I know stuff's in the queue, like I'm just compelled to like go through the process of entering it, which I don't always have time for. So, but I'm a bit neurotic. Okay, so navigation, you can default put on classic menus. You can show whether the account bar, which is this guy here, is on the left, on the right. You can show the cents in this account bar, or you could have it be rounded. You could show or not show the Quicken toolbar, which is this. Actually, I recently did a video on the menus in general, and I wasn't sure that you could turn off that toolbar, but apparently you can. Oh, no, sorry, that's this toolbar. My bad. These are called, I forget what those are called. So this toolbar, I don't show that toolbar. Doc sidebar, what's that? Oh, the to-do sidebar there. And I guess there's probably other items that can go in this right sidebar. Combine bills, income, and transfers. So that's over here in the bills and income section. Obviously you can combine bills, income, and transfers and adjust the way that looks. But as I pointed out in this other video I did, I customized my dashboard just to have these two items here, this one and this one. So I don't use that. Taurus. Oh, this is like, I think, tooltips you can have turned on. Obviously, I don't have them turned on. Colors, you can adjust like the various colors you see here to your liking. I just kind of keep it as default. Let's see, color scheme. So there you go. It's like a whole different color scheme you can adjust. I just leave it as default. Setup. Obviously, this has to do with key commands. So I use standard, key commands. I leave that default. This actually, I don't have sounds on, but you can have different sounds probably for like when you hit enter and the check register makes like a cash register sound. This little animation thing, I turned this off because I had some issues where I was having like one of my files was being sort of persnickety, and I called support and they said you could try turning off the animation feature, and that might resolve some of the issues. So I generally keep that off in all my files. Automatically minimize pop-up windows. Frankly, I don't know. Use subscriber settings for new files, accounts, and features. So if you've gone and bought Quicken, basically you have an account with Quicken. So the way it works actually with your user is that you have this account, like a web-based portal account, I guess. It's also the same account you use to like buy the software. When you open Quicken, you can have as many files as you want, like with one user, but you can only sync one file. Excuse me, my eye is really itchy. You can only sync one file to your portal. So you'll only be able to see one file through the web-based or mobile phone-based access. But you can still have multiple files under your kind of username. Like you can have an unlimited amount of different files, not that you would, but you can only really sync one to your portal. And so probably this is if you make a new file, you're saying, have your subscriber settings apply to that new file that you set up. But I don't know, it's unchecked by default, and you could leave it unchecked. Calendar and currency, it's kind of where you set what your fiscal year is for your books. Mine is on the calendar year. Multi-currency support, I frankly don't use that. I don't really know where that would come into play. Perhaps if you had bank accounts in other countries, in other currencies, maybe this would come into play. Backup. You definitely want to have automatic backups on. I set it to run a backup every time I close Quicken. So if it's open and I close it, it's going to make an automatic backup of the file. You really want to have backups of your file. That's really important. However, backups, in my file, for example, because it has so many years of data and it's kind of large, it's like 250 or 300 megs. And if I just let it keep making backups and putting them in a folder, like it actually takes up a lot of space over time on my computer. Plus I have like, I don't know, files for like 8 or 9 clients. So I make the maximum number of backup copies to be 2. You don't really need manual backup reminders, so this is backing up automatically every time you close Quicken one time. You could say, hey, every time I close it 2 times or every other time, make a backup. I do it every time, but I set the maximum number of backups to be 2 so that it starts deleting older backups. You don't really need anything more than your last backup usually. A manual backup is if you go to the file menu and just do a manual backup. Sometimes if I'm doing, like, going to make a big change or like add accounts or do something to my file, or I don't know, I'll do a manual backup so I have a backup right at that moment. That way if something gets screwed up, I can just quickly, restore. And, so that's when I would do a manual backup. I don't need a reminder to do that though, because it's yet an extra backup. I will say that I run Quicken, well, as I often say, I run Quicken in parallels, but I keep the file of Quicken on Dropbox. Now Quicken doesn't officially support this, and it'll even show you a notice if you try to open a file from Dropbox for the first time. It'll say, I see you're running a file off a shared drive system. We don't support that. But it allows you to do it anyway. So I keep all my Quicken files on Dropbox. I run them right off of Dropbox on my computer. Obviously, if you understand how Dropbox works, it's a local stored copy of your data that it syncs to the Dropbox server. And I think now they have like a streaming version where you're not actually storing a local copy on your computer. You're just streaming the version from the Dropbox server. I know Google Drive does that as well. You want to keep local copies. I know this works well with a local copy. And what happens is Dropbox is then sort of keeping a backup of your file as well. You can actually go restore 30 days worth of previous iterations of a file on Dropbox website. I've used that once actually in kind of like a jam. So I'm backing up. It sets a backup folder where you store your main Quicken file, so you have your backups on Dropbox as well. Okay, Web Connect. Give me an option of saving a file whenever I have Web connected. So Web Connect is the functionality where you attach your bank account. You go in, you log into your bank online, and you download files directly into Quicken. That connection is generally called Web Connect. Sometimes it's called Express Connect as well with certain banks. It seems like this is like giving you an option to save a Web Connect file, like a QXD file, I think it is, when you make that download right into Quicken. I wouldn't want to ever do that. No need to do that. So I don't have that checked. Keep Quicken open after Web Connect completes. Yes. I mean, I've never changed this. Maybe it's saying it would close the software after you do a download. I don't know why you'd want that. So let's keep that checked. Alerts and messages. Receive messages from Quicken. So when you go buy Quicken, you're setting up, an account on their server, and they want to send you solicitations. You can uncheck these here, and this will stop you getting most of the emails from Quicken. Sometimes you'll still get some emails, like promotional stuff. I'm like religious about constantly unsubscribing from stuff, so I can keep my inbox sort of neat and organized. So I'm always unsubscribing, but you can also unsubscribe here. So throughout using Quicken, you're going to find some pop-ups when you do stuff like, hey, this is a duplicate check number, as an alert. It'll show up as a dialog box. Oftentimes, you can say to Quicken, stop sending me those kinds of notices. I don't care about duplicate check numbers. I actually do care about duplicate check numbers, so I would never say don't tell me that. But there are a variety of little warnings, that Quicken puts up so that you don't essentially create bad data for yourself. You can reset all those warnings back to the default if you're like, oh man, I wish I'd never told it to not tell me about duplicate checks. Well, here you can reset all that, and it'll go back to kind of like showing you everything, and then you can slowly tell it what you do and do not want to see. Bill minder settings. If you pay your bills through the Quicken service, so Quicken offers a paid monthly service for bill pay. It's essentially the equivalent of the bill pay you get at most banks these days. Like I use Bank of America, they offer bill pay for free. Bill pay is like you can put in, your gardener, your whatever, and it'll send them a check. I mean, it's kind of old school in that it still sends people checks mostly. And my bill pay at Bank of America doesn't offer an ACH payment option. What Bank of America does offer for me to send ACH payments to people or whatever utilities, more to people is Zelle. With Bank of America bill pay, oftentimes for bigger payments, they will send an electronic payment to like a credit card, but for most send it to Johnny like I said, gardener. It's going to send a check. Quicken offers a service like that for like a monthly fee, and if you use that service for your bill pay, you can pay bills right out of Quicken. It used to be the case that Quicken, through Direct Connect, would interface with my Bank of America bill pay, and I could send a Bank of America bill pay right out of Quicken. They've discontinued that service. I don't know if it's because they just wanted to drive people to use their own bill pay, or if Bank of America and whatever other banks, allowed that, just don't want the hassle of it. But I used to use it. I ended up finding it easier just to go on my Bank of America website and send the bill pay anyway. So this bill minder settings probably has something to do with the bill pay service if you're using it. Wow, that was a long sort of diagonal diatribe. Sorry about that. Investments here. Okay. This is the default way for you to set up your investment register. I always switch my registers to 2-line, so I would have this probably have each register default as a 2-line display. You can show which which transactions you want at the top or bottom, oldest or most recent. I always have oldest at the top, most recent at the bottom. That's how I like it. Show hidden transactions. I would say yes. I'm not really sure what a hidden transaction would be, but so I would keep that default on. Show attach button. Yeah, if you want to attach, like, I don't know, you can attach like statements to things or receipts to transactions, whatever. So you need the attach button in order to do that if you want. I generally don't attach anything at all, but it's good to have that option. Sort same-day transactions by security name. So if you have like multiple buys in your register in one day, this would say sort them by security name versus, I don't know what the default is. Maybe it's transaction ID or something like that. Register columns to hide. These are like all of these options you can actually set in the register for the account itself. When you set them here in preferences, you're setting the default view for what would show up on a register when you create an account. So you don't have to worry too much about what the default is. So I would just leave these mainly as the default. Other preferences, automatically update quotes every 15 minutes. You could do that if you wanted. It's default off, so there you go. Enable simple investing, track simple positions. Okay, so when you set up a brokerage account, nowadays with the newer Quicken updates, it's going to give you the option for simple tracking, which really mostly tracks the total balance of the account for your net worth versus individual transactions. Or you can do the complete, which is what I call gives you the transactional level detail. I think this box just allows you to have the option of the simple investing, which is why it's on by default. You could take this off, and when you go to set up a brokerage account, it won't give you that option. So I would just leave it on, because you have the option to choose when you set up the account. Extend share precision. So by default, Quicken gives you the option to have up to 6 decimal places for fractional shares. This gives you the option to go to 8 decimal places. At first glance, I would think, why would you even care? But with cryptocurrency, if you're going to track crypto in Quicken, you might want the extra digits. But I mean, I just round up and keep it at 6. Real-time quotes, you could check this, and it would constantly be checking for your quotes, not just every 15 minutes, but all times. Obviously, if you were like trading, actively as a day trader, you'd want real-time quotes, but you're not trading on a Quicken, so I don't think we really need that. Register. Okay, so here are some default settings for the register, and the register again is like, when you're clicked into an account, you're going to see what looks like a checkbook register, like old pocket checkbook register. It mimics that, so that's why they call it a register. These are more default options for those. I don't have, like show date before check number. Yes, I have that. Show memo before category. I always have that checked. It's hard to explain what that is without me going through the register in detail, so I'll do that in another video. Automatically enter split data. Automatically enter decimal point. So decimal point is if you want to type $100 or $100.01, you would have to go 100.01. If you have it automatically place the decimal, you don't have to type the decimal. I like to type the decimal. Automatically enter split data. When you put in a transaction in Quicken, just like in any bookkeeping software, you can basically do a split categorization, or some people call that journaling. I don't know why I would automatically enter split data, so I'm going to keep that off because how would it know? But I guess ultimately I'm not familiar with that feature. Register appearance, gray reconciled transactions. I like that. So after I reconcile an account, everything that I reconciled, the text type dims gray, and I like to visually see that those are all reconciled. Remember register filters after Quicken closes. I don't know. I've saved that off. I'm not sure what that does. Use pop-up registers. No, I keep that off because it pops up like anytime you go to categorize something, it'll pop up the split. I don't like that. Okay, data entry in Quick Fill. I've covered some of this in my transaction download and categorization video. Most of the basics, defaults I keep on. Like I kind of keep it as it is by default. The real critical ones here: offer to update past transactions when a category is changed. You want that checked, but you only want to do it when updating. But uncheck only when updating uncategorized transactions. For more details on that, go watch my video on downloading transactions and categorization, but this is kind of an important feature for making categorizing quicker over time. Automatically open drop-down lists. Sure, yeah, I keep that on. Recall memorized transactions require automatic completion. No, I don't keep that on. That would auto-fill in names when you're putting stuff in the register. It might be annoying. Complete fields using previous entries. Again, auto fills in information. I think I take that off, but you could keep it on. It might work for you. But sometimes, see, if you click one off, it grays out another. So really, this almost is like a sub version of this one. Use Enter key to move between fields. No, I use the Tab key, so I keep that off. Automatically memorize new pays. I keep that on. As you say you type in whatever Johnny Smith is your gardener, it's going to memorize that transaction, memorize that name, and also associate a category with that name. So next time, if you start typing in Johnny Smith, it'll fill out Johnny Smith, and then it'll likely put in the correct, the previous category you used for him automatically. Automatically include in pay calendar lists. I don't use the calendar, so you could just keep that on. If you decide to use the calendar for whatever reason, you might want that off. I don't know. Add address book quick fill items to memorize pays. No, I keep that off. Please remove memorize pays not used in the last 14 months. I put 6 months. So every time a transaction goes into your register, whether you enter it in manually with typing in or it gets downloaded, that pay will get memorized. That list of memorized pays can get very long. So if I set this to remove people not used in 6 months to keep it a little smaller. Notify when entering out-of-date transactions. So yeah, this is where you can kind of choose which pop-up notifications you get and don't get. I keep this one on before changing reconciled transactions. When entering uncategorized transactions, no, I don't keep that on because sometimes I want to have a transaction remain uncategorized for a little bit. To run reconcile report after reconciling. Sure, after you reconcile it, offers you to run a report. You could take that on or off, depending if you want to save the reports. I don't save the reports, so I would have that off. Warn if a check number is reused, yes. You want it to warn you if you're using a duplicate check number. When changing the account of the existing transaction, sure, to save a transaction after changing it. No, I don't need this would be like, oh, I changed a transaction. It'd be like, are you sure you want to change this? And you have to enter yet again. So I have that off. Writing checks. This is if you're actually going to print checks. It gives you some options for that. I don't print checks anymore, so I don't really need that. Downloaded transactions. This is an important one. I go over this in more detail in the transaction downloading categorization video. So after downloading, automatically add to banking registers. No, you don't want that on. I don't want, what that means is you would download transactions, and instead of them going to like this holding place where you can sort of review them, it just throws them in your register. I don't like that, so I don't put that on, because as I mentioned in that other video, like Quicken will learn how you do things to help make it faster, but a lot of times, the AI of it is not that great, and it learns the wrong thing, and then will now start doing the wrong thing and make your life more difficult. That is also true of all bookkeeping programs. QuickBooks is particularly bad at that as well. So I don't like to automatically put anything in. Don't want to do automatic to investment transactions. Never interpret downloaded money market funds as cash. This actually would be a good one. I never even noticed this before, but when you have a money market funds in your as the base holding of your brokerage accounts, sometimes Quicken will say, "Oh, that's actually a security," and I don't. It's annoying because it will like ask you to like keep entering it as a security when you know it's really cash. So you could put this never interpret downloaded money market funds as cash. Actually, I guess you would have that off. So hopefully, if you have it off, it will interpret money market funds as cash and will not ask you to enter it as a security. So that's good to have off, I believe. I don't even know what these are. A lot of assignment after download. Compare account portfolio after download. Oh, I see. Okay. I'm going to go, those are a little more in depth for the brokerage accounts. I'm going to skip those. Automatically categorize transactions. Yes, you can do that because it'll memorize the payee and then memorize the category that goes with that payee. And when you download something from that payee, it should give it the right category. However, again, if it memorized the wrong thing, it's going to apply the wrong thing. So you want to make sure that it's memorizing the right thing, as you do this over time. Automatically apply Quicken suggested name payee. No, I would keep that off because you want to sort of set your own renaming rules. Capitalize the first letter only in download payee names. Sure, it seems like a silly option, but use my existing renaming rules. Yes, and again, in that video, I go over this more detail. You set renaming rules. It will automatically apply your renaming rules. Yes, you want to do that. Automatically create rules when I rename pays. Yes, but you want to keep this. Let me review and confirm my automatically created rules. You want to keep that on. Transfer detection. This is important. We want to make sure that this is on scan load down transactions with possible transfers, but let it allow you to confirm a transfer before it enters them. So basically a transfer is like, hey, I move money from my savings account to my checking account, right? So instead of like, when you categorize that in the checking account, the category you put is the savings account, and therein lies the transfer. When you download transactions, though, if you didn't put that transfer in your register in advance, when you download transactions, your checking account's going to get a download for the money out, and your savings account's going to get a download for the money in right around the same date. Quicken will look at those and say, hey, I see money's going out of this account for $100 on this day, money's coming into this account for $100 on this day. Is that a transfer? If you say yes, it'll automatically create the transfer transaction. Sometimes it's not, though. So if you let Quicken make that determination on its own, sometimes it'll get it right, sometimes it'll get it wrong. So you always want to be able to confirm that. That's important. Reports and graphs gives you some basically default options, reports and graphs. I leave the defaults on. This is important when you're in a report and you make a change, like a saved report, and you make a change. It will allow you to save it as a new report or not, or just when you hit save the old report. I have create a new report, and I I do a save as, and I just sort of replace the save. The save I make is replacing, the file that's there. The reason I do this is because sometimes I want it to be a new report, and I don't want to save over my old report. And if you have customized modified current report or graph, you're always going to be replacing your report more quickly, and you'll have not be given the option to give it like an alternate name and make it a secondary report. So I'll cover that more in the reporting video, but keep that here. Customized reports and graphs before creating will probably automatically pop up the customization box for a report instead of you having to click the customization box yourself. Again, more on that in reporting, but I'll keep this unchecked. You can check keep cache basis reporting if applicable. This really only applies to your business accounts, and I will do a video on business reporting specifically and show the difference between cache basis reporting and accrual basis reporting, which is only, again, available for business reports. Okay, reports only. This is where you can choose how you want things to display, the font sizes of the reports. You can choose to apply color in expense reports. Means that if there's a negative number in a report, it'll be red. I take that off because I don't like to see red and black, but you can keep it on. Quick zoom to investment forms. I don't frankly even know what that does. Decimal places for prices and shares. This would be if you're doing a report for your stocks. It'll show, this is how many decimals it'll show for your fractional shares, and like the price you paid per share, sometimes can be more than 2 decimal places. Remind me to save reports and graphs. You might want that on at first until you get used to reports. That way, if you make a special report, you don't forget to save it. Collapse all graphs and reports by default. Yeah, so some of the reportings have a combination of graph and numbers and type. You might want the graphs on by default or off. I would say keep that checked off so you can see the graph and choose if you want it or not. Mobile and web is where you just choose to be syncing to that account I mentioned earlier in this video. When you buy your Quicken, you have a web-based account, and you sync this data to that web-based account, and that's how you can see it through your web-based portal in your mobile phone. I don't actually use the web-based account or the mobile phone stuff, so I keep syncing off because it just will, add time to certain steps. But if you're always, if you're going to be working on all three, like on your computer, on the web-based, on the mobile, you would have that on. Quicken ID and an iCloud account. This is where you show what account email the file is associated with. Currently, this file is associated with my account at Quicken. Now, I have multiple files associated with my account at Quicken, so it's important if you have multiple files, and the only reason I do is because I have these tutorial files and stuff. If I had sync on for all of them, they would all be fighting to sync with an account that only allows one file to sync, and it would probably cause errors. So FYI, if you're going to have multiple files for whatever reason, you want to make sure the sync is off for all but one of them. Okay, man, that was a lot. I honestly thought this video was going to be quick, and God knows how long it's been. Like I said, Quicken is deep. I think that's a good thing. Other people, that might frighten them, but I do feel often that my content is suited towards the people who get into this kind of stuff, take it really seriously, and understand the value of taking it seriously. So that's probably why I like Quicken. Anyway, I will catch you in the next video. Thanks so much. Bye.